Saints, good morning and welcome to Latter-day Saints on this Tuesday morning. We have quite the episode lined up for you. And if you haven't been here and you're here for the first time, welcome. We're trying to present news and important things happening in the world and in the Latter-day Saint sphere. Is it sphere? Well,
I think it's hexagon.
Hexagon. In the Latter-day Saint hexagon. So you can be updated and look at the world through a gospel lens. And on today's episode, I've done a few episodes on this before, but the word of wisdom is so inspired, it's insane, and there's so many more things happening every single day that prove that to me, and I love highlighting that. So we've got a weird story with Campbell's chicken noodle soup, and it's pretty shocking as one of our highlights, and then we're going to be getting scripturally based, talking about the Garden of Eden and how to guard our children from deception and allow them to develop spiritually without dying in the low and enduring world, dying spiritually, that is, of course. And in our featured story, one of the most famous ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon content creators is being threatened with a lawsuit by the church, and I think it's about time. But we'll get into that. Welcome. My name is Jackson Wayne Paul, and this is Latter-day Saints. All right, swagger hounds. Have you ever heard that term used before, swagger hound?
No, but
someone that just hounds swagger. Like they just have so much swagger.
You're making fun of me right now?
With the SOJ merch, yes. I'm talking to people like you. We're going to get right into our first headline. And so if any of you have watched our first episode, we talked about the word of wisdom being so inspired, and then we followed up on another story that is basically highlighting just these huge food conglomerates that just want us sick and addicted to their food so they make money off of us. And we highlight how that is so inspired in the revelation of the word of wisdom. But I felt like we needed to do another story on it because I came across this video on X that disturbed me greatly. And then as I went searching online, I found this crazy story that has to do with Campbell's chicken noodle soup, not specifically their chicken noodle soup, but including it, Campbell's Soup Company. But Brando, if you want to pull up that first X link, we're going to watch this video. This, basically the context here, I think she's in Canada, but she's at Aldi, which is one of my favorite stores in Portugal when I was on my mission. It's a phenomenal store, or so I thought. She goes through Aldi and she finds a common denominator amongst all these different foods in which she picks up at Aldi. So,
and I have never seen this before.
Let's watch it. Good clarification there, Brenda.
Here at Aldi, and almost everything they have contains bioengineered food ingredients.
Again, bioengineered food ingredients. Bioengineered.
We heard you. Look how small that print is.
Yes, it's getting smaller. Bioengineered food ingredients.
Contains a bioengineered food ingredient.
Okay, so
when I hear the word bioengineered, I think of like I think of like a duck with like the head of a moose or something like that.
You think of something not natural.
Yes.
Right?
Unnatural.
Not natural, okay? You think of something that is not natural. Bioengineered food products, okay? And Brandon, I want you to scroll down just a tiny bit. A guy tags Grok, the AI, and says, Grok, what is considered bioengineering in the food industry? Can you find that right there? It's like one of the first things. Perfect. Okay. So Grok, again, we're taking it with a grain of salt, okay, because it's AI and it can be wrong. But it says, in the food industry, bioengineered foods per USDA contain detectable genetic material modified via lab techniques like in vitro recombinant DNA, which can't occur through conventional breeding or in nature. Common examples include certain varieties of corn, soybeans, canola, sugar beets, and papayas. Labeling is required for such products in the U.S. Okay.
Bro, that's like straight out of a friggin' Spider-Man sequel.
Yes, it's like we use genetic material modified via lab techniques like in vitro recombinant DNA.
It's the stuff of fiction, dude.
That's being put into your food. It's being put into your food. And anyone that has an Aldi nearby, it's likely going to be in all your food. And then this guy responds and he says, what are the health risks to consumers who eat modified genetic food products? And it says, scientific consensus from organizations like the World Health Organization and Food and Drug Administration indicates that approved genetically modified foods are as safe as conventional ones, with no demonstrated health risks in populations consuming them. Potential concerns including allergenicity, gene transfer, or unintended effects, but evidence is limited and assessments are rigorous. Some studies suggest possible links to issues like autoimmune disorders, though not proven. For details, see the World Health Organization's Q&A, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Obviously, there's something very not natural happening with all of our foods, right? Very not natural happening with all of our foods. And it's no secret that things like these autoimmune disorders or celiac disease, gluten intolerance, all of these things are just rising in the trend. And I myself have had a ton of different stomach problems, and I've had to change my diet a ton because my stomach just gets wrecked eating foods that I have eaten for a long time, but my body has grown some sort of intolerance. Now, maybe I'm the exception and not the rule. And maybe I just have weak genes and I can't handle these genetically modified foods. But honestly, I'm kind of glad my body's rejecting it because it's not natural. And then when I start looking up more like bioengineering in food and stuff like this, I come across this story that's happening with Campbell's Soup Company. And it's pretty insane. Okay, so if you want to pull up that click on Detroit thing, basically, yeah, something weird has happened at Campbell's Soup Company. So we're going to watch this video. It bleeps out all the swears, so if it offends you, sorry, but it bleeps them out. But this video is crazy, okay?
A former Campbell's Soup Company employee is taking legal action against the food giant, and he's making some explosive allegations about one of its top executives. Good evening, and thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Ty Steele.
I'm Kimberly Gill. Those allegations are now at the center of a lawsuit claiming the company's vice president went on an hour-long tirade attacking the company's products and employees before taking aim at its customers.
And the former employee recorded it all. Eric Erickson shares that recording and what the company is saying about it.
We have shit for poor people. Who buys our shit?
And that's just part of an over an hour-long rant, says former security analyst for Campbell's, Robert Garza of Monroe.
I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. It's healthy. Now that I know what the in it, even in a can of soup, I look at it, look at meat, bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer.
The recording allegedly from Campbell's VP and Chief Information Security Officer Martin Bally.
He has no filter.
Bally, along with another supervisor and Campbell Soup Company, named in a lawsuit filed Thursday. The suit claiming Bally made racist remarks, admits to coming to work high, and Garza fired for coming forward.
What do you think about the things that he was saying?
Oh, just pure disgust.
Garza says he usually worked remotely for Campbell's headquarters, based in Camden, New Jersey. But thinking he'd be discussing his salary with Bally, he says the recording taken in person at a restaurant.
They couldn't think for the
wow.
Garza says he felt sick after the rant, deciding to go to his direct supervisor in January, keeping the recordings to himself.
He had never had any disciplinary action. They had never written him up for poor work performance.
Garza says no one at Campbell's ever followed up, and it's taken him 10 months to find a new job, calling the way the canned soup company handled it simply terrible.
I love
They have a
Campbell's
motto,
chicken
like
noodle.
we treat you like family, here at Campbell's, come work for us, we treat our employees like family. That's not the case.
We did just receive a statement from Campbell's. It says, quote, if accurate, the comments in the recording are unacceptable. They do not reflect our values and the culture of our company. We are actively investigating this matter. We've also reached out directly to Martin Valley. Erica Erickson, Local 4.
Bro,
Why is she eating it? Why is she eating it?
it's for dramatic effect. Bro, have you ever been sick
Yes.
and super sick, and then you just sip some Campbell's chicken noodle soup and it just warms
Warms
your
your body
soul.
and soul. I love the Lipton little soup.
Oh yeah.
Soup. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude,
Little
it sounds
soup.
like though that they bioengineered the VP.
Dude, that guy is wild. That guy is unhinged, bro. He was crashing out. And what's
Does he
so
have a
funny
point
is,
though?
yeah, I'm glad Homeboy recorded the conversation and there's a lot to unpack there, but he's literally the VP of Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup, and he's talking about how their soups have meat that is bioengineered and comes from a 3D printer. It's like, I can't think of anything more disgusting. And here's the thing. All these people that own these companies, you think they're eating their product? You think they're eating their own product? Heck no. They are not eating that garbage. They're
I
not
never
eating
thought about it
garbage.
that way actually.
Yeah, they're making all this stuff and they don't partake in it because they know what's in it. They know what's in it. And oh gosh, it's insane. But anyways, such a crazy story. So many things to unpack there when he's talking about this stuff is just made for poor people. It's made out of bioengineered meat. It's disgusting.
Wow.
It's crazy. And so it's just one more example of showing how the word of wisdom is so inspired. And I'm going to read verse 4 again because it needs to be hammered into our hearts and minds, because it's not the first thing that I was taught about the word of wisdom, and it's one of the most inspired, but it's given for this following reason. In verse 4 of section 89 of Doctrine and Covenants, it says, behold, verily thus saith the Lord unto you, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation. Because of the evils and designs that exist in the hearts of conspiring men. Okay, this is one more example. The VP of Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup, he knows what they're putting into these foods. All of these people that make these food and ship it to Aldi, they know what's in these foods that's bioengineered. It's not natural. It's not good for our bodies. And the further epidemic of chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, all of this stuff, all of the above is just further evidence of the evils and designs of conspiring men. Okay? Yeah. They want you sick. They want you addicted to their food. And I guarantee if we, this is pure allegation right here, okay? Allegedly, okay? Because I've seen evidence of this. All of these people that have these food corporations, they are heavily invested in big pharma as well. They make money off of you being sick. They make money off of you being addicted to food. So please, let us heed the word of wisdom, the marvelous revelation that talks about eating everything in its season, in the season thereof, not eating things that are just chock full of all of these preservatives and bioengineered food products that are made in a literal lab.
Definitely. And before we close up this segment, I want to ask you, because I don't want to leave the viewers hopeless at all, because this is pretty bleak. Is there still good food you can get from the stores? How do you know what that food is? And, where do we go from here now that this is becoming more and more apparent in the food industry?
Is it okay if my answer is I'm still trying to figure it out?
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure it out, because like I referenced before, this app that we're not sponsored by at all, I've just been using it for the last year. It's called Yucca, or Yucca, because Yucca sounds better, Y-U-K-A. But it's this app that's allegedly not funded by all these food conglomerates to then just promote their own products. But it's a nonprofit organization that has an app that you scan barcodes, and it tells you if like what type of preservatives or additives are in foods, and that has helped me a ton. So
yeah, so we'll leave a link for it in the description.
I use that, but I'm curious. I want to scan a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup and see what that says.
Oh man,
we'll return a report on that. Anyways, word of wisdom, so inspired. God bless. God bless the word of wisdom. All right, moving into our featured story. This is very interesting and kind of hits home because I have a good amount of personal interactions with John Dehlin of Mormon Stories podcast. Okay? Just to give you a little background, if you don't know what Mormon Stories podcast is, it is an anti-Mormon media outlet hosted by John Dehlin, who his intention is to, quote unquote, make the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a more healthy place. Okay? A more healthy place. So what does he do?
Whatever that means.
Yeah. For the last, 20 years, he's been making videos, and it's just progressively over the years gotten more and more deceptive and presents itself as if it's this, channel made by members of the church, and they're just trying to make the Mormon church more healthy. But if you watch any of their videos, of his videos, they show their cards all the time. And I'll be honest, I came across Mormon Stories and I thought it was sponsored by the church.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons was because of its branding. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into this. But basically, Hayden and I, we went on Mormon Stories podcast about a year and a couple months ago, and we had a conversation with John Dehlin. It was 6 hours long. It was super long. Don't go watch the whole thing, but if you're a sick freak and you can sit down for 6 hours, then go ahead, watch it. It was very revealing. A few things just to help you understand who John Dehlin is, okay? We have a clip here. Brandon, please play that clip. And I'll explain more of the context so you're not saying, oh, you're clipping John Dehlin, blah, there's more of the story. I'll explain it all. Go ahead.
We all have positive feelings about Jesus, but it's actually, the atonement is actually an insidious doctrine because it's all based on a deficit model of your brokenness and you needing someone to make you clean and to make you whole.
Okay. So right there it says Mormon Stories number 1443. I suggest you go watch that entire episode because it's even more shocking how he shows his cards. But he says there that the atonement of Jesus Christ is an insidious doctrine. It's an insidious doctrine, right? One of the most beautiful things that has ever happened, the most beautiful thing that has ever happened on the face of this planet, Jesus Christ overcoming sin and death, opening the gates to allow us to return back to our Father in heaven.
And specifically with our doctrine, giving the option to everybody and having a form of happiness for everybody who's ever lived on this earth.
Exactly.
It does not sound insidious to me.
Exactly. And it's such a twisting of the scriptures. It's crazy. And so in that interview, I pressed John Dehlin on this. I'm like, you have said that the atonement of Jesus Christ is an insidious doctrine. Okay, John Dehlin, being the critic that you are, let's say that you are in the chair of God, the throne of God. You are God, John Dehlin. Tell us what would be a better solution. And then he essentially goes and reiterates Satan's proposed plan that he would have everyone believe, and he would, not everyone believe, he would make it sure that everyone is saved and not a soul would be lost. I did a reaction video on this. We'll link it in the description. But he basically reiterates Satan's plan without even noticing. And then when we're like, John, that's not the first time that someone has thought of that. And he's like, oh, who, Korhor? And we're like, no, Lucifer. And then he gets all nervous. It's so funny. But then just because I'm trying to set the stage, help you understand a little bit of background on this man, John Dehlin, and his platform, Mormon Stories. After we filmed our episode with him, he takes the thumbnail that was originally this happy, awesome, fun thumbnail. It says, talking with two believing LDS Marines, Hayden and Jackson Fall.
Look at how cute you are.
Look at it's blue, nice light blue. We're happy, smiling in our Marine Corps uniforms. And then literally the next day after we filmed, he switches it to this. Millennials try to defend Mormonism. Has Hayden with his
so
scriptures
sinister
there, and then has me wide-eyed looking like a murderous freaking psycho, which, you know, I can come off as a murder psycho sometimes. I recognize that.
Yeah.
But I'm not one. Okay. And so you just see here that John Dehlin, he is working to undermine the truth claims of the church and ultimately undermine the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So to further do that more effectively, his branding of his channel is nearly identical with the church. Brandon, let's pull up here. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's the church's icon, right? You see like the kind of rays of light in the Christus statue. Okay, let's go to their Instagram one. Mormon stories with the same rays of light. Like, if I didn't know any better, just like when I first came across Mormon stories, I would think, oh, this is, you know, the Mormon church. Oh, Mormon stories. Yeah, this is people telling their stories of being in the Mormon church. Like, this is members. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And it is definitely 100% not that. It is definitely 100% not that. And so finally, the church has reached out, and he posted this on every single one of his social platforms. Brandon, if you want to go to the first one that kind of shows the caption of it. Yeah. Perfect. So it says here, feeling terrified that the LDS Church wants to use lawfare to shut down Mormon Stories podcast via trademark claims that we've been in operation for 20 years. Please help me find an IP expert if you can. So then he posts the actual communication that the church has with John Dehlin, and we're going to read it for you, and we're going to see if that claim of the church wanting to shut down Mormon Stories is accurate. Okay? So it says in the first, it says, Dear Mr. Dehlin, I'm reaching out to you regarding trademarks and copyright materials used by Open Stories Foundation. My name is blank, and I manage the intellectual property office of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Part of my responsibilities is to help maintain the integrity of trademarks and copyrights owned by the church. My office has received questions and comments from the public regarding materials on the Mormon Stories website, YouTube page, and other social media pages that feature church trademarks and copyrights. While the church respects your right to host a podcast, operate a website, and maintain an online brand, the church has an obligation to protect its trademarks as unique identifiers to prevent confusion about what is and isn't official church content. Pretty reasonable thus far. It continues saying, for example, the Mormon Stories name and logo shown below incorporate church trademarks, including the word Mormon and a light raised design, both of which are registered trademarks of the church. The headers of your podcast, YouTube, and Facebook pages similarly feature the Christus logo. But it says, another registered trademark of the church using these trademarks is likely to create confusion among viewers, especially when combined with a color scheme and a font that mimic those used by the church. So, Brandon, I want you to zoom in there. And it goes and it has, you know, all of the church's trademarks or the church's profile pictures on all their different socials. And then it has Mormon Stories in the middle.
Indistinguishable.
Indistinguishable, bro. Indistinguishable.
And you guys, this is absolutely intentional.
1,000%.
Absolutely intentional. And it's pretty deceptive. This to me is a very clear wolf in sheep's clothing move by John Dehlin to, like you were saying earlier, attract members of the church to his podcast, to put on the facade of this is a pro LDS church podcast, and then for them to be sucked into the maybe if they have some weaker testimonies, the second that they get sucked into one of his videos, like he has all the tools there to just destroy the rest of that testimony. And I think that's what he is trying to do. I mean, I don't think, like, it's clear here that that's, even in the branding, that's what he's trying to do. And it's really kind of scary if you're not using media literacy to kind of figure that out.
Yes, and discernment. And even if just someone has general questions, like I have a bunch of questions about the church and different doctrines and stuff like that. And if you're going to Mormon Stories podcast to find those answers, you are going to get an extremely biased against the church view. Extremely biased against the church view. And so it continues in the email. It says, the Mormon Stories website, YouTube page, and other social media pages that are used to promote your business and podcast likewise feature pictures copyrighted by the church, such as the image of President Russell M. Nelson shown below. Now, look at this thumbnail, okay? You have the former president of the church in front of the Salt Lake Temple, and it says, what to do if you have doubts. And it says, with LDS discussions. It's like, there's no way someone not knowing what Mormon Stories is going to see the logo and then see this thumbnail and be like, oh, this has got to be a church-sponsored thing. This has all the branding. This looks like a church-sponsored thing.
This is what's insidious right here.
Yes. Talk about insidious, bro. You're deceiving people on purpose so you can make money off of faith crisis. You can make money off of views.
It's actually kind of disturbing to me because I think if you're going to go the anti-Mormon, ex-Mormon route, you should just be upfront about that from the very beginning. You should be straight up. But it's clear that from people like John Dehlin or Bill Reel with, well, I'm not going to say what his podcast is because I don't want people finding it, but they're using these tactics that the Antichrist would use to pull people in subtly. And I know you're going to talk about that in the scripturally based segment, but it is so clear, and we need to be discerning. We need to take President Nelson's counsel to have the Holy Ghost with us constantly because of things exactly like this.
Yes. So I'm just going to finish the email, and then we'll just continue to crash out in a good way. In a good way, okay?
In a measured way.
Using trademarks and copyrights in this way makes it likely that a person seeing your iconography would reasonably but wrongly assume that they are viewing church-affiliated or sponsored content. Agreed. For these reasons, we ask you to agree that you will remove and discontinue use of the church's trademarks and copyrighted materials on your platforms. The church respects your right to free speech and has no desire to censor your podcast, website, or social media accounts in any way. Our request is that you update elements of your branding to ensure viewers can distinguish your content from church content. The request is consistent with the church's response to trademark infringement. Contact us, basically. So let's go back to the original post. Brandon, do you remember what he said? He says, okay, I asked this question, but I'm just going to read it, okay?
All right.
It says, feeling terrified that the LDS Church wants to use lawfare to shut down Mormon Stories podcast. Was there anything that I read in that email that said that they want to shut down?
Not at all. In fact, they were very kind about saying that he should continue to do his podcast, minus the use of the church trademark.
Exactly. They say the church respects your right to free speech and has no desire to censor your podcast, website, or social media accounts in any way. Our request is that you update elements of your branding to ensure viewers can distinguish your content from church content. So in every single way, he's being deceptive because the church isn't trying to shut down Mormon Stories, which, dude, you've been doing this for 20 years and you're clearly trying to deceive members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to think that you're affiliated with the church, which you are most certainly not in favor of people continuing to have a full faith in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to make this point, Jackson, but I come from a marketing background. I have a degree in marketing. And I just want to ask you, Brother Dehlin, if you end up watching this, if we took your, what's his mental health?
So he has his own. Let me look it up real quick. Yeah, it's called Thrive Beyond Religion.
Okay, so if we were to take Thrive Beyond Religion, make our own company. I'm not sure exactly what his company is, but I know he has that company, that branding. If we were to take it, alter some things, Thrive Horror Stories. Or no, not just even that.
Stories.
Just Thrive Stories, because Thrive Horror Stories would be on the nose.
Exactly.
But if we were trying to be deceptive and say Thrive Stories, we had maybe some similar colors, but some similar graphics or something like that. I mean, but then when people actually approach our company and find out that it is anti-Thrive, like, would that not make you want to use lawfare against us for defaming your brand by using your trademark? I don't know. Like, it's just a question that you need to ponder, Brother Dehlin. Is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, dude, it's so silly, and there's so many things to be said about the content that he produces that's extremely frustrating. But yeah, I guarantee if we made a Thrive Stories and invited people that, went to your events or paid $150 for an hour of coaching through their faith crisis, if we got people on that had negative experiences with your organization, not to say that there are in tons, but I'm sure there's at least one. We make a whole YouTube channel on it. Thrive Stories have the same type of branding, and then we just post things that undermine your organization. How would you feel about that? How would you feel about that? And look, bro, you've been doing this for 20 years. And I've talked to dozens of people that point to your podcast as the thing that catalyzed them leaving the church.
It's
and justified it.
CES letter in podcast form.
Yeah. Like, stop trying to act like you're something that you're not, okay? And so I do this expose because it is more important now than ever for all of us to gain a heightened level of discernment when it comes to everything that we see online. We need to have the Holy Ghost with us, and we need to have discernment. Hayden and I... Yeah, I guess just moving on a little bit, we're getting into our scripturally based segment here. Hayden and I gave a presentation recently about the importance of the Garden of Eden, okay? And some aspects about the Garden of Eden. And just talking about briefly, like, what are the aspects of the Garden of Eden? It's a place where God dwells. Everything is in its proper order. It is incomplete without man and woman. There's unity with God. It's a place of responsibility. God gives a commandment to Adam and Eve to dress and keep the garden, which basically means to till and guard. Keep is to guard, okay? The Hebrew word for keep is to guard. And it's a place of innocence for a time until they partake of the fruit and they know between good and evil. And here's the thing about it is before they are, kicked out of the Garden of Eden, after they partake of the fruit, they understand what is good, what is evil, right? The distinction between the two. And then God clothes them, okay? It says in verse 21 of Genesis 3, it says, "Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them." Okay? We in the LDS religion, we see this as a representation of the holy garment, the garment of the holy priesthood, which is a physical representation of the atoning blood of Jesus Christ covering us. Okay? And so before they leave the Garden of Eden, they get this coat of skins, this protection, both physical and spiritual, right? And then they are giving commandments to stay linked with God in the lone and dreary world, right? There's that instance in which Adam is performing sacrifices and the angel comes to him and says, Adam, why do you perform sacrifices? And he says, I know not, save the Lord commanded me. And line upon line, precept upon precept, he is instructed to be able to stay connected with God in the lone and dreary world. In our homes, we need to create gardens of Eden, as it were, with our little Adams and Eves, right? And it needs to be a place where innocence can be fostered to a certain extent, but they're not completely shielded from it, so that when they're in the lone and dreary world, they freak out and they don't know how to discern between right and wrong. But we need to have a place where kids aren't ripped out of the Garden of Eden against their will, if that makes sense. Before they're ready, before they're properly instructed how to discern between right and wrong, and they are clothed in the garment of the holy priesthood. Now, let me just get into this a little bit more. I made a reel about this, but around the time of the awful assassination, public assassination of Charlie Kirk, there were unspeakable videos circling on the internet. And I myself had a very negative experience when a content creator that usually makes gospel-centered content reposted the video of Charlie Kirk's assassination, where when I clicked on her story, I thought that I was going to see something else that would point me to the scriptures or teach me something about the gospel. And instead, I saw one of the most horrific displays of humanity that anyone could ever see. And then come to find out, my little sister had nearly the exact same experience. A 16-year-old girl seeing an awful image like that. And I said in this reel that when you give your child access to social media, you don't give them access to social media. You give social media and the world access to your child. Okay, think about that for a second. There's so much depravity on the internet, and it wasn't that long ago before, one, those things weren't even allowed on social media. You had to go to the most dark and depraved parts of the internet to find that stuff. Two, there used to be content warnings where you had to willingly click, I want to see this sensitive content. And nowadays, you can just open up your Instagram feed and see something awful like that. Okay? And so one, social media, I don't know if it's a place for youth, really. Yeah, I think the data shows quite the opposite as well when it comes to mental health and depression and suicide and stuff like that. Social media definitely isn't a positive tool that brings people away from anxiety and depression. More likely, the data shows that it brings people closer to a heightened level of anxiety and depression. And so, when it comes to discerning between right and wrong, our homes need to be a certain type of Garden of Eden that we are instructed, we feel the Spirit of God, just like I talked about those different distinguishers of the Garden of Eden. It's a place where God dwells. Everything is in its proper order. There's unity with God there. And, it's no mistake, or it's no coincidence, I don't think, that the age of 18 is when someone is able to go and get their endowment, receive their endowment. And I think that all instruction in the home needs to be Christ-centered and focused around preparing youth to go out into the lone and dreary world, to put on the garment of the holy priesthood, to discern between right and wrong, be given the tools that will keep them linked with God as they go out into the lone and dreary world by themselves, so that wolves in sheep's clothing like John Dehlin don't end up ripping them out of the Garden of Eden, deceiving them, and then sending them on a path of nihilism and atheism that ultimately leads to a worse place. A worse place. That was a long monologue, Brandon.
I thought it was.
What do you think? What do you think, bro?
I thought it was great. I don't have anything to add. It's beautiful. Are you ending here? Because I got something to show our audience.
Do you?
Yeah.
I guess I'll say one more thing before we maybe end on a happy note. Hopefully it is. 'cause it's kind of been intense. The gospel of Jesus Christ is so phenomenal. It is so phenomenal. One of the things that John Dehlin said in a conversation over lunch that we had is one of the things he misses most about the church is community built around something positive. And he then said that he has tried time and time and time again to recreate such a community in a secular form. But it never ever works because he said, and I quote, and I mentioned this in the interview with him, you can go back and watch it, that it always seems to digress or dissolve into swinging, drugs, and alcohol. Wow. All things that lead to happiness, right? All things that lead to happiness, right? And so basically what he's doing is he's taking apart, he's deconstructing people's faith, right? And then leaving them with a pile of dung. He's calling good evil and evil good, and he leaves you nothing. He leaves you nothing that will lead you to a better place in life. And yeah, and so I just want it to be clear that this is just one more example of John Dehlin using deceptive tactics to deceive you and your children and your friends and your family to hopefully get you to watch more of his content, one, because he makes tens of thousands of dollars a month off of it, and to leave the church. And he'll say, oh, my goal isn't to get people to leave the church. I want people to stay in the church. I just want it to be a healthy place. But if you watch any of his content, you know that, yeah, he's not making videos to hope that people stay in the church. He is very antagonistic and critical of the church and the truth claims. So if you disagree with me and you have some receipts to back that up, go ahead. Hit me in the comments. I'd love to read them. I'd love to hear your arguments. Please, with anything that I spew out my mouth on this show, if I'm totally in the woods on this one, let me know in the comments. But Brandon, what
and
do you
John
got for us?
Dehlin, not only should you be afraid of the church's lawfare coming after you and shutting down Mormon Stories podcast, you should be afraid of their bioengineering department sending an army of duck mooses to you.
That actually looks awesome. That looks amazing. We should talk to the bioengineering department to make some sort of duck moose combo. Beautiful.
You just broke my eardrums.
I'm sorry. We'll have to turn down the audio.
So watch out, John Dehlin.
No, but... And I reached out to John Dehlin before this, and I said the following, just as he's sharing his personal interactions with the church, I said the following. I said, hey, John, hope you're doing well. I'm planning on talking about this interesting situation on our daily show. I'd love to talk to you about it first to get some of your thoughts before I film it. He says, can't talk about it, unfortunately. Thanks for reaching out, Jackson. And I said, I'm confused. You've posted it publicly on every single one of your media channels. And he says, I was just seeking an attorney. Got great recommendations. Well, I'm glad you got great recommendations, because what it looks like is you're not doing something that, one, is legally okay and 100% not morally okay. So let us get into the scriptures, develop our spiritual sensitivity so that we can better discern between truth and error. Remember, if you're not looking at the world through a gospel lens, you're only getting half the story. May God bless you.